In part 1 I covered the first 4 CSGO operations, which were like temporary DLC for the game. They got increasingly elaborate, and only continued to do so in later ones, which I'll cover now. The 5th operation was Operation Vanguard, released on November the 11th, 2014. Previous operations, like Breakout, would give you missions to do, but Vanguard elaborated on these by visualizing them, creating campaigns that you could battle your way through. You'd start at a certain point, then could choose which missions you wanted to complete. As you did these, it would unlock more, until you eventually reached the end of one of the paths, which would award you a certain number of stars. For a silver coin for Operation Vanguard, you needed 3 of these stars, and for gold, you needed 4. The more difficult the route, the more stars you got. 2 of these campaigns were initially available, with 2 more being purchasable. These 2, Maghreb and Eurasia Theatre, were like DLC for the DLC, each costing $2.99 extra. You could only do a limited number of missions a week, 2 if you only had the base pass, with 1 extra for each additional DLC that you bought. In other words, if you had all 4 campaigns, you could do 4 missions a week. These missions were a mixture of casual and competitive matches and objectives, which gave players a reason to try game modes that they otherwise might not have bothered with. Arms Race also played a part and got some updates of its own, having its weapon order shuffled about a bit and gaining 3 maps, Lake, St. Mark and Safehouse, which were previously only available in demolition mode. It also majorly punished whoever was first on the server by showing everybody where they were at all times. Valve please fix. And of course, this operation came out with an exclusive Operation Vanguard collection of community-made skins. There were 6 community-made maps featured in the operation too. Back Alley, a hostage map that was originally developed alongside Train for a beta version of Counter-Strike by Barking Dog Studios. Workout was the only other hostage map to be included. You may know this one as it returned to the game for a while more recently. There are also 4 defuse maps. First was Bazaar, made by Skybex, who has done rather well out of the operations, having also had his Chinatown, Workout and Cruise maps featured at some point or another. Facade, or as I like to call it Facade, was a map made by Top Hat Waffle, who you may know for his mapping tutorials. Marquee was a beautiful, colour-corrected and extremely large level situated somewhere in Paris. Pone got another one of his maps, Season, featured in this operation. A very clean and modern looking map that I think the community thought would officially be added to the game for a while. As well as these 6 community made maps, a month into this operation, the new version of Train was added back into the game and bundled into the operations map group. If you Google Operation Vanguard, you'll see that it's the name of a real thing, though in this case, CSGO did it first. Operation Bloodhound, the 6th operation, was released about midway through 2015. It featured 2 campaigns, now with stories and character voiceovers and everything. Players of Counter-Strike will be familiar with the experience system, which now serves as a barrier of entry for new players and as a thing to level up your annual service medals with. But this system was first introduced with Operation Bloodhound, and at the time was simply there to unlock free drops. While past operations immediately gave you stuff for beating missions, the ones in Bloodhound instead just gave you experience, and reaching a new level would give you a new drop, limited to 1 a week. A bit like with the previous operation, to rank up the Bloodhound coin you needed to collect stars by reaching them on the campaigns. But more stars were required, 9 for silver and 14 for gold. To slow progress down, you could only do 1 mission a day, though these stacked, so if you didn't play for a week, then you'd be able to do 7 right away. There were 6 community-made maps, 6 exclusive weapon collections, and a falchion knife, only obtainable from the falchion weapons case. One of the mission types was to assassinate a particular player in casual games, which played in with Bloodhound's story in some way. I don't know if anybody really cared too much about it. Operation Bloodhound also introduced the co-op game mode, where 2 players would have to defend against increasingly difficult waves of bots. A new crash site Guardian map was made specifically for this game mode. Fun fact, the video I made about it was the first on this channel to be made in full 4K. Map-wise, Operation Bloodhound featured Agency and Season again. Then there was the colourful jungle diffuse level, Log, a cold, worn-out map situated in an abandoned rail yard in Detroit called Rails, and then 2 maps part developed by Yanzel, the first being Resort, which was set around a luxury hotel in a tropical setting, and the second being Zoo, which became a fan favourite and returned to the game again later. There was also the map Crash Site for that Guardian game mode where players defended against waves of bots. After a lengthy gap of 139 days, more than twice as long as we ever had to wait for a new operation before that point, came Operation Wildfire in early 2016. This 7th operation came with a new Blitz mode, which gave increased experience on specific competitive matches at certain times in the day. Getting everybody to play the same games at the same time I think was used to reduce queue times, which for a while was a major complaint with the game, although I personally never had a problem being in Europe. Wildfire also came with 2 campaigns. The first was aptly named Wildfire and functioned similarly to the previous ones. It comprised of a series of missions across a number of casual game modes. Clearly, the community didn't like the earlier update that made the leader on arms race glow through walls, so this was removed again for this operation. While this campaign was similar to the past ones, Wildfire's second campaign, called Gemini, thought that it was time for something completely different. Most of these missions were on the Guardian game mode, first introduced in the previous operation. You play these with a friend against bots, on cut-down versions of the 7 featured community-made maps, as well as official Valve creations. But at points through this campaign were special one-off missions, all hosted on the Valve-made Phoenix Compound map. Although not the Guardian game mode, it retained the co-op theme against bots, but as you passed through the level you were met with various objectives and set pieces. The health kit and wallhack grenade were added to the game specifically for the missions on this map, though the health kit has since been added elsewhere, like to Deathmatch and to Danger Zone. Identically to the 6th operation, you needed to collect 9 stars from the campaigns for a silver coin, and 14 for a gold. Operation Wildfire came with just one hostage map, called Cruise, where you had to battle across a huge great cruise ship. There were 6 diffuse maps included. Coast is based in an almost tropical looking Italian village by the sea. Empire is based in New York and has the Empire State Building in the skybox. Mikla is a very colourful diffuse map situated in a Mediterranean city. Royal is an almost black and white map situated in snowy Scotland. Effenpone got yet another one of his maps included. Santorini is based on a real place on the coast of an island in Greece. And Tulip was made by Cat Food, and I think has always confused me by having an extremely similar thumbnail to Ruby, also made by him. Oh, and he did Log as well, and shipped. He's made lots. This operation came with the Phoenix Compound map, which, to confuse things, was given the file name Cement Plant. There had been community-made co-op missions on the workshop for years, but Phoenix Compound was Valve's first. These housed 3 separate missions which could be played cooperatively with a friend. It was really cool. You were rated for how well you did in the missions, with points awarded for doing it quickly and for collecting coins scattered across the level. The map was later uploaded to the workshop by Valve, so can still be played to this day. Valve has even added a little mission select bit at the beginning. Operation Wildfire's map group later added Nuke, when it was re-released in March of 2016 with a sunny facelift. Operation Wildfire came with its own weapon case featuring these skins, as well as a case-exclusive Bowie knife. And last is Operation Hydra, the 8th and most recent operation the game has had. The gaps between the operations had steadily grown, but it was almost a full year between Wildfire and Hydra, the longest yet. Until now. It came with 3 new game modes which could be played by anybody. The first was Wingman, which has been in the game ever since. The second was Weapons Expert, which was a 30-round match where you could only buy each weapon once. Both of these modes came with their own ranking system. And the third new game mode cycled through different twists on casual play every week. There were all kinds of weird things here. You could buy a $6,000 suit of heavy armour in casual mode. There was a headshot-only deathmatch. You'd collect dog tags from fallen enemies, would have knife fights and rechargeable Zeus's. There was a really rubbish mode that hurt you every time you missed a shot, which kind of rewarded players who just hid from the action until the end of the round. It sucked. And then there was Flying Scoutsman, which has remained in the game ever since as well. You could play on these modes even without buying the Operation Pass, but getting it gave you additional unique drops from participating in the new game modes, and unlocked a co-op campaign full of Guardian missions against bots. To get a silver coin required 5 stars, gold needed 18, and a new diamond rank of coin required 25. To manage this, you needed to complete the co-op campaign and to get 2,000 experience from the casual game modes every week for the whole 18 weeks the operation was active for. When compared with past operations, getting the new diamond coin in Hydra was a pretty big commitment. Operation Hydra came with its own case, featuring these weapon skins. Of its 7 community-made maps, you'll already be familiar with its hostage ones. Agency and Insertion had both already been featured in the game by this point, as had its diffuse map, Black Gold. Austria is a diffuse map set in a mountain village, and it later returned to the game again. This operation also featured Shipped, set on a cargo ship. This map worked well with the Guardian game mode. Light was the second map officially included in the operation to be made by Ted, following season. I also know him for porting Mirage to Source. And the last map, D-Thrill, is also linked to Mirage, having been made by Mirage's maker, Bob Kess. This theme park map was originally titled Mirage 2. Operation Hydra also contained the Flying Scoutsman map Dizzy and the Wingman map Rialto. In total, there have been 41 community-made maps featured in the operations. 9 have been featured twice, Seaside 3 times, and Agency has managed to be included 4 times. FM Pone has been the most successful, having had almost every one of his CSGO maps included at some point or another. He's had his maps featured 7 times across 6 operations. But on top of that, he's also had cash officially included into the game. This means that at least one of his maps has been playable during every operation so far. Not to mention Sub-Zero as well for a few months since the last operation ended. Operation Hydra ended on November the 13th, 2017. CSGO has since had other updates, like going free to play and getting a new Danger Zone game mode. Valve still adds new community-made maps to the game from time to time, but it's normally just 1 or 2, and they're quietly bundled into an existing map group, whereupon they'll receive some changes, may jump between map pools a bit, and then most eventually get removed again. It has now been 732 days, and counting, since the last operation ended. Have Valve moved on from the idea of operations? Only time will tell.